Hello and welcome to Just for Farmers. This short session, I wanted to do something a little bit different, and some of you may think I'm paying lip service or even patronising you doing what I'm going to do. That is not my intent. My intent is to foster an innovative way of looking at things. You see, I don't think for 1 minute that I could suggest things to you that you could do to change or diversify your farms. And not all of you want to diversify or change your farms. I get that. But what if you did, or what if you had to? What if government, legislation, war, famine, what if it means you had to change the way you operate on the farm? How good are you at pivoting and innovating and putting in a sustainable replacement to your current business model? Now, what I'm going to do is something I did in the charity fundraising sector, which is, I just off the top of my head came up with an A to Z of things you could do differently on your farm to generate an income and secure you and your family's business. I appreciate that 99.9 of these you'll probably dismiss as fluffy, flippant nonsense and no, not for me, David. But what if there's one thing in there that you could look into, research, and maybe plan for, that in the event, or if you want to diversify, you could consider it because you've got a plan in place. You're not reacting, you're driving the change. You see, if we're driving change, there's no need for us to fear it. Most people fear change and they get caught up in that whirlwind of uncertainty, and that's the biggest cause of problems, uncertainty. And so they end up procrastinating and doing nothing at all for fear of doing the right thing. Does this make sense? So all I'm doing is fostering ideas, and I want you, please, to consider sitting down with your team and your family, maybe suppliers, or maybe with your local colleagues in the pub, and try this exercise. When we did it in the fundraising sector, it fostered so many ideas for charities that they ended up raising tons and tons of money in far, far more innovative, fun and creative ways than ever they had done before. So what I'm going to do is I'm simply going to go from A to Z and come up with some left field and right field and pragmatic ideas that maybe one out of all of them could really work for you. Does this make sense? So, let's just say one of these things is a practical idea. What I suggest you do then is some market research. Most people set out in business without even having an idea as to whether or not their idea will work. They invest sometimes their life savings in diversifying into a new business, a new venture, a new idea, and they haven't even asked anybody if they'd want it or would pay for it or how much they'd pay for it. That is suicide commercially. So if any of these ideas, or indeed your own ideas, ring true for you, do some research. Ask locally, is this needed? Is it wanted? Would people pay for it? How much would they pay for it? Before you jump ship and invest a lot of money in diversifying. So let's just kick off on this A to Z. And yes, some of them are difficult, like the J's and the X's and the Z's. That's a bit more difficult. But let's just have a bit of fun, okay? So I'm not under pressure to change the world here. The idea is for you to write your own A to Z. Let's start with the A, shall we? Well, how about turning your farm into a series of allotments? That seems to be quite popular at the moment. So people want to grow their own food. But if you could either just turn the whole property into allotments, or maybe certain fields have very specialised food, like one for mushrooms, one for whatever. Forgive me, I'm not a farmer. One for flowers, edible flowers, maybe. So consider diversifying that way. How about getting in touch with local agricultural colleges or universities and saying, would you need an operational farm where you could train your students? So you could become a training centre of excellence. That's enough of A. How about B? How about put up a huge marquee and have a beer festival? In fact, if you do that, invite me. How about turning it into a biomass farm instead? How about having a big toys day? Now, do you know what I mean by that? There was a stately home in Leicestershire. I'm trying to remember the name of it now. Packwood House or Packwood Hall, run by a very eccentric guy called Lord Packdrury Lowe, a wonderful, wonderful man. And he was desperate for an income because his property was diminishing in its credibility, infrastructure needed repairs. And so he started running what's called Big Toys Day. And in one of his big fields, he had an airstrip and a road going through it. And he got an old coach, a truck, a tractor, a JCB, and I think a tank. And people would pay him a reasonable amount of money. And on weekends, he was chock-a-block, and in the holidays, with people wanting to spend the day being taught how to drive these big toys. And he made good money. On the airfield, he did some security driving, teaching people how to drive in like a defensive, safe way, an oil skid pan and things like that. And he made money out of that. Let's have a look at C. How about turning it into a campsite? Have you got a lovely location with lovely views, and actually could turn one of your barns into a toilet, wash, shower facility? Maybe you could turn it into a campsite. I've seen that happen down on the south coast. What about the D? Loads of farms around here in Staffordshire have dedicated one little field to a dog walking field where a family can just have one field. They shut the gate behind them, no other dogs, and they can train their dog, and the dogs can let off the lead, and they make money while they sleep at night. All they had to do was put a fence around the field. Crazy. E. How about escape room? Now, you could either turn your farm buildings into escape rooms. If you don't know what that is, look it up. It's where people play a game to try and solve a puzzle to get out of a room in a certain time. Or maybe invite ex-special forces instructors to run an escape from Colditz live action scenario game where they interrogate you, they capture you, they interrogate you, they keep you in prison, and you have to try and escape. People will pay for that. How about the farm as a whole? Would it be safe to convert into an event space, and you notify all the other farm attractions, event organisers, conference organisers in the area and say, come and have your event at our farm? I appreciate these are generic, but run with them. What about the F? How about have a festival on your site? Get in touch with your local festival organisers, because typically farmland drains really well, can cope with a lot of rain, so that'd be good, wouldn't it? What else could you do? You could have music festivals, food festivals, craft festivals, farm skills. How about skilling up and having different farm skills? Weekends, invite people onto the farm and you teach them how to dry stone wool or to plough a field or plant potatoes. People will pay for that stuff. This is a random one for G. Couldn't think of anything else. A goat farm. People will come and pay just to play with baby goats. So why don't you have a goat farm? Plus the fact goat meat is becoming very, very popular now, because people look at what they're eating and the quality of the meat. H. How about having a Highland Games, even if you're not in the Highlands? Start an event in your county on your farm that's an annual event. Hey, that's how what's the big music festival? Glastonbury. That's how Glastonbury started. One farmer had a concert in his field. Come on, why not you start something? How about having a He-Man event, like ultra marathons on you? Have a real proper extreme event. It's a knockout. There are companies out there with huge It's a Knockout setups looking for properties on which they can have their setup, and company teams come and play on it for the day, having an It's a Knockout tournament. They're looking for property and fields that are suitable for that. Why not your farm? Ironmans as well. Yeah, is there an Ironman event that you could hold on your site? J. this was a hard one for me, so I just came up with jam making. You a fruit farm that you could turn into jam making, and I'm not going to go there. You can come up with the ideas there. K, turn it into dog kennels and kenneling for cats, dogs, horses, budgerigars. Have an aviary. Why not? People go away. They want their pets looked after. L, have a literature, a book fair. Put up marquees on the fields or on the farm property and have a book fair there. I know, tenuous links, eh? But M, have a motor show or classic car, or turn your indoor properties into a mushroom farm. Tenuous links, but does it spark anything within you? How about N? Now this is a weird one, but run with it. Not everybody wants a religious funeral these days. How about you turn your farm, see if you can get it turned into a natural burial ground, either for humans or for animals. Fairly low maintenance, reasonably high profit. Oh, obstacle course, orienteering. You know how some farms have got these mazes, corn mazes in cornfields? How about you having either an obstacle course or a maze or an orienteering thing on your property? P, if you remember a chat with James in an earlier episode, half of his farm he puts over for parking of caravans now. Again, reasonably straightforward income for very little effort. These are just ideas. What could you do? How about having ploughing lessons or a pick your own fruit? Q, how about having silent or quiet retreats? I know that's tenuous. What, can you think of anything for Q on a farm? Quince growing. R, turn it into a rare breeds farm, or a petting zoo. S, how about having scientific trials on the land? Now, again, this is down to your morals, your ethics, and your standards, but seek suitable partners for either mechanical, agricultural, chemical, fertilizer trials to be taken on your land. I appreciate you'll have to chat with DEFRA and Department for Agriculture and all the things to get it clear, but they've got to test them somewhere. Why not your land? How about having stag weekends or turning into a solar panel farm? T, how about all the foreign labour that comes over? How about your farm is the training farm, where they learn some basic English and learn how English farms work before they go and work on local farms, setting them up in the winter and the spring. You see where this is going? Just different ideas. I don't know what I'm put here. I wrote something down and I can't read my own writing. I've put trade lots. I don't know what that means. Have you got any buildings you could turn into little trade units? Start a little industrial unit. How about creating a local community union or a cooperative or a little buying group or selling group that helps all the local farmers come together? You're the one that manages it. Vertical farming. Have you got an old barn that you can turn into vertical farming, which is very popular these days for things like flowers, herbs, vegetables, and mushrooms, and turn it into a visitor attraction maybe. We've already talked about visitor attractions in another episode. Consider visitor attractions. Now, W, wilderness skills. What do I mean by that? Wilderness skills. Get people who are specialised in either foraging, survival skills, or bivouacking. And have you got the kind of property where people could learn survival skills? Why not? Weddings. Could you try? When I used to be a caterer and event organizer, we did some massive weddings on farms, and we converted barns. We had them all cleaned out, which the farmers loved anyway. And then we put up drapes and internally, and it looked like the most incredible venue for a wedding. And I remember seeing a sunset over a Cumbrian hill from this magnificent wedding barn. So why not your farm? How about turning into a wind farm? Now, that could be controversial, but could be very profitable. The X was a difficult one. Now, run with this. I know you won't want it, and it's not even practical, but get the kids onto the farm, have an Xbox competition in your barn. Hey, And I joke, but then let's think logically. Esports is so popular at the moment. Why don't you start a national competition on the Xbox or whatever, PlayStation, whatever it is, for one of the games, and your farm be the place where everybody comes? You see how all of a sudden the most ridiculous, impractical idea can be something that's actually, yeah, that could work. Why? Now, the only thing I could think of for a why was yurts and glamping. So how about yurts? How about wigwams and teepees? And consider you turning your farm into a staycation hospitality venue. And the Z, zebras or a zoo. An unusual zoo with unusual wild rare breeds and things like that. So there's a little bit of an A to Z. So can you, with your team, your family, your colleagues in the pub, do an A to Z, pick 2 ideas out of all of those I've just said, just pick 2 and do a bit of research. Start finding out, A, is it legal? B, is it practical? C, would it be income generating, profit generating, not income generating? And is it needed? Is it wanted? Would it fly? Do the research before you even consider diversifying. Never ever just throw money at an idea. Always do some research. But what you might find is that there might just be something in there that works for you. And if that's the case, look into it. Go and make a point of visiting at least 10 other farms that have diversified into different things and speak to the owner. Ask them about the advantages, the disadvantages, the highs, the lows. They will tell you 2 great things. They will tell you A, what to do, and B, more importantly sometimes, what not to do. Learn from other people's mistakes and stand on the shoulders of giants, if that makes sense. Go and look into people who have done what it is you're trying to achieve. And above all else, have fun doing it. If you're going to do this, remember, the only time we fear change is when we're reacting to it because of uncertainty. If you're driving that change, there's nothing to fear because you're driving it. Let everyone else follow you. Could you imagine the first farmer in the UK who said, I'm going to turn my farm into a craft centre and a soft play area? And can you imagine the local farmers laughing at them and mocking that person? And yet, probably worked. So, enjoy the idea of diversifying. Don't fear it. Look into it if you need to. And even if you don't need to, consider having a plan in place so that there's always a plan B in case challenges arise.